At the start of that trip, when my mother turned to me and snapped, "Stop ruining this vacation with your sister. If you can't behave, then leave," something inside me froze. I had heard many variations of that tone throughout my life, but never so blunt, never so final. And when I calmly replied, "Fine," and picked up my bag, I realized this was the moment I would remember forever. If you have ever sat quietly in a family gathering while every smile, every question, every gesture of attention circled around someone else, you will understand why I am telling this story. My name is Evelyn. I am 34 years old, and for the first time, I am speaking out loud about what it means to be the shadow child in a family that worships only one star. I did not plan to share this publicly, but silence has been my prison for too many years. This trip became the day that silence broke. We had flown to Florida for what my mother called a family getaway to heal old wounds. That phrase already sounded like a cruel joke. From the moment we arrived at the airport, I noticed the familiar choreography. My mother fussed over my sister, Lauren, adjusting her scarf, carrying her bag, asking if she needed water. I walked beside them unnoticed, dragging my own suitcase, my hands stiff from gripping the handle too tightly. At the rental car desk, Mom asked Lauren where she wanted to sit. I was left with the back seat, squeezed next to luggage, pretending it did not matter. It had always been this way. My earliest memories are filled with moments like these. On my 12th birthday, when I won the state spelling bee, I came home clutching my trophy, cheeks aching from smiling. Mom barely looked up. "Lower your voice, Evelyn. Your sister is studying." 2 weeks later, when Lauren was picked as an alternate for the junior varsity soccer team, the whole family went out for pizza. Balloons, cake, photos. No one remembered that I had already earned a medal that month. That pattern hardened into the rhythm of our lives. Lauren's smallest achievements became family milestones. My largest ones were filed away like background noise. The unfairness did not crush me. It hollowed me out, shaping me into someone who learned to measure silence, to anticipate rejection, to vanish before being pushed aside. So when my mother called this trip healing, I almost laughed. Healing for whom? We checked into a beachside condo, white walls, glass doors opening to a view of the ocean. I carried my suitcase upstairs while Mom unpacked Lauren's things with the care of a hotel concierge. The first dinner set the tone. I had spent the afternoon marinating chicken, chopping vegetables, wanting to contribute. But when we sat at the table, Mom raised her glass and said, "Lauren, thank you for suggesting this trip. You always bring joy." I looked down at my plate, heat rising in my chest. Not one word about my cooking. Not even a nod. I ate in silence, the salt of the roasted chicken mingling with the salt of the sea air pressing against the window. The next morning, as sunlight spilled across the balcony, I suggested we visit a nearby art museum I had always wanted to see. Mom barely glanced at me. "Lauren wants the dolphin cruise," she said, "and we can't do both today." I stepped back, folded my arms, and said nothing. Later, when I mentioned that I felt carsick from sitting in the back during the long drive, Mom's reply was sharp. "Don't start, Evelyn. We don't need your attitude ruining this trip." My sister smirked, adjusting her sunglasses, while I swallowed the ache in my throat. Each word felt like a nail hammered deeper into the coffin of any hope I had for fairness. By the third day, the air between us was brittle. I tried again to offer something, asking if we could take one photo together by the pier. My mother's patience snapped. Her voice cut across the crowded boardwalk like a whip. "Stop ruining the trip with your sister. If you can't enjoy yourself, then leave." Around us, strangers turned their heads. My ears rang. I saw Lauren's triumphant little smile, the same one she used as a child when she had gotten me grounded by whispering lies into Mom's ear. And I realized nothing had changed. Decades had passed, but I was still the intruder, the scapegoat, the one told to disappear. I said only one word, "Fine." Then I turned, walked back to the condo, and began packing my bag. My hands shook as I folded my clothes, but my mind was startlingly calm. For once, there was no begging, no explaining, no desperate search for a scrap of approval. Just a quiet decision. If my presence was a burden, I would remove it. The taxi to the airport smelled faintly of pine-scented air freshener. I sat in the back seat, staring at the horizon where the ocean met the sky, and I thought about all the years that had led me here. I thought about the spelling bee trophy gathering dust, the uncut birthday cakes, the empty seats at my college recital, and I thought about this trip, billed as healing, delivered as humiliation. That is why I am telling this story. Not to wallow, not to seek pity, but to lay bare the truth of what happens when a mother builds her world around one child and leaves the other to survive in shadows. People think family loyalty is unshakable, but I know better. Loyalty without love is just a leash. That day, when I left the trip early, I cut mine. And though my mother might tell others I was selfish, though Lauren might laugh about how I could not handle the vacation, I know the truth. I did not ruin the trip. They ruined me. Long before Florida, long before adulthood. All I did was walk away. And sometimes, walking away is the only way a forgotten daughter learns to breathe. When I sat on that plane heading home alone, my mind did not stop at Florida. It drifted backward, unspooling years of memories I had buried to survive. People often think one cruel moment is what breaks you, but the truth is it is never just one. It is the small cuts that slice you open long before anyone notices. My childhood was full of them, silent but sharp. I was 8 the first time I realized my place in the family. It was Christmas morning, the tree glowing with colored lights, the smell of cinnamon rolls filling the house. Lauren tore into box after box, new sneakers, a gold necklace, a shiny bike. I unwrapped 2 gifts, a sweater too big for me, and a book my mother picked up from the clearance bin. I loved books, but even at 8, I could feel the difference. The sweater was not bought for me, it was an afterthought. I remember holding it up, the sleeves hanging past my hands, while Mom fussed over how beautiful Lauren looked on her new bike. That was the moment I understood love in our house was not shared equally. It was rationed, and I was not the favorite. The years that followed only confirmed it. When I earned straight A's in middle school, I rushed home clutching my report card, waiting for a proud smile. Mom barely glanced before saying, "Don't brag, Evelyn. You'll make Lauren feel bad." A week later, when Lauren scraped by with a C in algebra, Mom threw a celebratory dinner. "She worked so hard," she said, as if effort alone deserved a crown. I learned to swallow my joy in silence, to tuck my victories into a box no one would open. By high school, the pattern was unshakable. Lauren wanted the lead role in the school play. She forgot half her lines in the audition, but still got cast as the star because Mom stormed into the principal's office, insisting her daughter deserved a chance. I had joined the debate team that year and made it all the way to nationals. When I showed Mom the flyer with my name printed in bold, she frowned. "That means you'll be gone for a week. How will Lauren get to soccer practice if I have to drive you?" I smiled weakly, told her I could carpool with a teammate, and paid my own travel expenses with money I earned from babysitting. The photo of me holding a trophy in Washington, D.C. never made it onto the living room wall. But the poster of Lauren in costume from her high school play, that hung there for a decade. It wasn't only about achievements. It was about daily life. At dinner, Mom always asked Lauren first how her day was. When Lauren sighed dramatically, everyone leaned closer, as if the smallest detail of her life mattered more than anything else. If I spoke up, Mom would cut me off. "Don't interrupt, Evelyn. Let your sister finish." Slowly, I learned to stop talking. My silence became the background music of our meals. The injustice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was in the looks. At the mall, if Lauren wanted a new dress, Mom handed over the credit card without hesitation. If I asked for something as small as a pair of sneakers, Mom's answer was clipped. "Do you really need it?" The message was clear. Lauren's wants were needs, but my needs were wants. On my 16th birthday, I threw a small party with a few friends. I decorated the backyard with string lights and baked cupcakes from scratch. Halfway through the evening, Mom called Lauren outside to show her a new car, shiny red, parked in the driveway with a bow. The party ended with everyone crowded around Lauren, taking photos of her in the driver's seat. My birthday became her celebration. I smiled through it, the taste of frosting turning bitter in my mouth. Looking back, I wonder why I tolerated so much. Part of it was survival. When you grow up being told you are less, you start to believe it. Another part was hope. The tiny, fragile belief that if I just worked harder, achieved more, behaved better, one day Mom would see me. One day, she would choose me. That day never came. Instead, the favoritism grew stronger as we got older. Lauren was clumsy with money, always behind on bills, always asking for help. Mom bailed her out every time. When I paid off my student loans without assistance, Mom's response was flat. Well, you've always been responsible. That's nothing new. Responsibility became my curse, a reason to be ignored. Even when my health wavered, Mom's loyalty didn't shift. At 27, I fainted from exhaustion after working 2 jobs. When I called to tell her, she sighed. I'm sure you'll be fine, but your sister is so stressed about her boyfriend not calling her back. Can you check on her? I sat on my apartment floor that night, holding the phone to my ear, listening to her concern for Lauren while I swallowed my own pain. That was the rhythm of my life. My struggles dismissed, her inconveniences elevated to crises. On the plane ride back from Florida, these memories crashed against me like waves. The trip had only been the latest chapter in a story that started long ago. My mother's words, "Stop ruining this trip with your sister," were not new. They were simply louder, sharper, impossible to ignore. For years, I had carried the weight of being the invisible child, hoping my silence would buy me peace. But silence had only made me easier to erase. That is why leaving mattered. Not just leaving Florida, but leaving the role I had been assigned since childhood. The scapegoat, the forgotten one. As the clouds shifted outside the airplane window, I pressed my forehead to the glass and promised myself something. If my family insisted on writing me out of the story, then I would start writing my own. And this time, the page would not begin with Lauren. It would begin with me. The weeks after Florida were quiet, but the kind of quiet that feels dangerous, like the air before a storm. I tried to settle back into routine, work, groceries, evenings spent alone with a book, but my phone would not stop buzzing. Missed calls from Mom, text messages dripping with guilt, and short notes from Lauren pretending she cared. "You overreacted, Evelyn. Mom was just stressed. You ruined the trip for no reason." That was her favorite line. Every time I read it, my chest tightened. Ruined the trip. As if 3 decades of being treated like the spare wheel meant nothing. As if my leaving was the problem, not the years of silence and dismissal. At first, I ignored them. I thought if I gave space, the noise would fade. But the messages kept coming, turning sharper. If you cared about family, you'd come over and talk this through. We've decided you should apologize to Lauren. She deserves it. The words burned. I deserved it? After everything? The arrogance of it was almost laughable. But the more I resisted, the more aggressive they became. Until one evening, Mom left a voicemail that made my blood run cold. "If you don't come to dinner this Sunday and fix this, Evelyn, don't bother coming back at all. We are done." It was not an invitation. It was an ultimatum. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the phone, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. For a moment, I thought about deleting the message and moving on. But something in her tone, it was the same edge she had used my whole life, told me this was not about dinner. This was about control. She wanted to prove I would always crawl back, no matter how many times I was humiliated. That night, I lay awake remembering all the so-called family dinners of my childhood. The ones where my voice was drowned out by Lauren's laughter. The ones where Mom cut me down with a look, a sigh, or a sharp word. And I realized this dinner would be no different. Unless I made it different. Sunday came. I drove to the house I'd grown up in, my stomach twisted tight. The porch light glowed against the evening sky, the same porch light that had once guided me home from school dances and late-night study sessions. But instead of comfort, I felt a chill. Inside, the smell of roast beef filled the air. Mom stood at the stove, her back stiff, while Lauren sat at the table scrolling through her phone. Neither looked up when I walked in. Finally, Mom turned. "Evelyn," she said flatly, "you're late." "I wasn't sure I should come," I answered, my voice low. Lauren smirked without lifting her eyes. "Well, you're here. Let's not waste more time. You owe me an apology." The audacity of it nearly stole my breath. She said it as if it were fact, as if I had wounded her, not the other way around. I sat down slowly, my hands clenched beneath the table. "For what exactly?" I asked. "For storming out of the trip and making Mom cry," Lauren shot back. "For ruining everything. Again." The word again cut deeper than she knew. Again, as if my entire existence had been a series of failures, as if I had been nothing but a burden since birth. I looked at Mom, hoping for even the faintest flicker of fairness, but her expression was stone. "She's right, Evelyn. You embarrassed all of us. It's time you take responsibility." Something inside me snapped, but not in anger and clarity. For the first time, I saw the script they had written for me and expected me to keep performing. I was the scapegoat, the villain in their story, the one who existed only to absorb blame so Lauren could shine brighter. And now they wanted me to sign my name under their version of events. I took a slow breath. "No," I said softly. The room stilled. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "What do you mean, no?" I said, steadying my voice, "I won't apologize. Not this time. Not ever again. You've spent my whole life asking me to shrink so Lauren could feel bigger. You've ignored my victories, dismissed my pain, and treated me like I was disposable. And now you want me to apologize for leaving when you told me to leave?" "No." Lauren laughed, sharp and cruel. "God, Evelyn, you're so dramatic. You always make yourself the victim." My eyes met hers across the table. For years, I had avoided confrontation, but this time I did not look away. "I'm not the victim, Lauren. I'm the witness. And you hate that I see the truth." Mom's face flushed red, anger boiling over. "How dare you talk to us like this? After everything we've done for you." Her words echoed in my ears. Everything we've done. I thought of the birthdays overshadowed, the trophies ignored, the nights I went unnoticed while Lauren was celebrated for doing less. What exactly had they done for me, except teach me how to disappear? I stood up, pushing my chair back slowly. "I came tonight because I wanted to give you a chance to hear me. But clearly you're not ready." Mom slammed her hand on the table. "If you walk out now, Evelyn, don't come back." I looked at her, really looked. For the first time, I did not see power in her eyes. I saw fear. Fear that her control over me was slipping. Fear that the daughter she had built her authority on was no longer willing to play along. "Then this is goodbye," I said quietly. And I walked out. My hands trembled as I closed the door behind me, but my chest felt strangely light. For the first time in 34 years, I had not bowed, had not bent, had not begged. I had chosen myself. That night, as I drove home under the cold glow of streetlights, I knew the storm had only begun. My refusal to apologize was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something they never expected. Me standing tall, no longer their scapegoat, no longer their silent shadow. And though I had no idea what fallout would come, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: they could no longer erase me. When I closed the door behind me that night, I thought the confrontation was over. But families like mine never let silence stand for long. Within 2 days, the fallout began. First came the texts, pages of them from Mom, alternating between fury and pleading. "How could you humiliate us like that?" Followed by, "Evelyn, you're still my daughter, but you need to learn your place." Lauren chimed in too, her messages sharper. "You'll regret this. Everyone already thinks you're ungrateful." I read each word with a calm I did not recognize in myself. For once, I did not feel crushed. I felt awake. Still, the storm spread wider than I expected. My aunt called, voice full of disappointment. "Your mother says you screamed at her and stormed out. Is that true?" My cousin messaged me on Facebook. "Why would you embarrass your sister like that in front of the family?" The narrative was already being twisted, just as it always had been. I was the villain, the unstable one, the problem to be fixed. But this time, I did not retreat. Instead, I gathered evidence, not because I wanted revenge, but because I was done letting their lies stand unchallenged. I replayed Mom's voicemail, the one where she told me if I didn't apologize, I was out for good. I saved every text where Lauren demanded I take the blame. And I began writing everything down, every memory that lined up with the same pattern of scapegoating. It was not just self-defense. It was clarity. The truth was sharper when written in black and white. A week later, Mom announced a family meeting. She sent the message like a decree: Sunday, 5 p.m. at the house. Be there. Normally, I would have avoided it. But something in me knew this was the moment everything would surface. When Sunday came, I walked into that house not as the trembling daughter who had once begged for approval, but as someone ready to be heard. The living room was full. Mom sat in her armchair like a judge about to pass sentence. Lauren lounged on the couch, feigning boredom but watching me with the sharp eyes of a cat ready to pounce. A few relatives were there too: Aunt Marie, Uncle Frank, even my cousin Daniel. It was clear Mom wanted an audience, to turn this into a performance where I would be forced to bend. Sit, Mom ordered, pointing to the chair across from her. I did, folding my hands calmly in my lap. "We are here," she began, "because you disrespected this family. You embarrassed us, Evelyn, and you owe your sister an apology." Lauren tilted her head, smiling slightly. "You know you went too far. Just admit it, and we can move on." The room waited for my compliance. For 34 years, I had given them what they wanted, my silence, my obedience, my absence. But not tonight. I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed play. Mom's own voice filled the room. "If you don't come to dinner this Sunday and fix this, Evelyn, don't bother coming back at all. We are done." The room shifted. Aunt Marie's eyes widened. Uncle Frank leaned forward. Even Daniel frowned. Mom's face went pale, then flushed red. "That's out of context," she snapped. "You don't understand." "No," I cut in, my voice steady. "It's perfectly clear. You've spent my entire life blaming me, silencing me, and using me as a shield so Lauren never had to take responsibility for anything. And when I finally left, you decided to rewrite the story. But this time, I won't let you." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You're exaggerating. Mom never favored me. You just make things up because you're jealous." I looked straight at her, my voice calm but cold. "Jealous? Do you remember my 16th birthday? When you got a brand new car in the driveway while my friends watched? Do you remember Mom dismissing my spelling bee win because you had a soccer game the next week? Do you remember me paying my own way to nationals while you got celebrated for forgetting half your lines in a play? Jealous, Lauren? Or just tired of being erased?" Silence thickened the air. My words were not loud, but they landed like stones in still water. Aunt Marie spoke softly, almost to herself. "I remember that birthday. I thought it was strange at the time." Mom's head whipped toward her, eyes blazing. "Don't encourage her. She's twisting things." But the cracks were already forming. Daniel shook his head. "It doesn't sound twisted. It sounds like she's telling the truth." I let the silence stretch before I spoke again. "I didn't come here to fight. I came because I'm done being the scapegoat. You can tell your stories, you can spin your lies, but I will not carry the blame anymore." Mom rose from her chair, her voice trembling with fury. "If you leave this family, don't expect to come crawling back." I stood too, meeting her eyes for the first time without fear. "I'm not crawling. I'm walking. There's a difference." With that, I turned and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard voices rising. Mom's sharp protests, Lauren's frantic denials, relatives murmuring in confusion. But I kept walking. Outside, the evening air hit my face, cool and clean. For the first time, I felt lighter. Not because the fight was won, but because I had stopped fighting on their terms. They had wanted me to bow. Instead, I had stood. They had wanted me to break. Instead, I had spoken. As I drove away, I realized something important. This was no longer about them accepting me. It was about me accepting myself. And in that moment, with the road stretching ahead, I knew the truth. Even if they never saw me, I would no longer live unseen. After that family meeting, I expected silence. Instead, the fallout spread faster than I imagined. Stories about me twisted and multiplied, carried through phone calls, group chats, and whispered conversations at church. I became the villain in every version, ungrateful, dramatic, cruel. Mom told people I had attacked her. Lauren claimed I was jealous and bitter. It would have been unbearable once, but now their words felt like smoke. They stung, but they no longer blinded me. What mattered was that cracks had begun to show, and not just to me. Aunt Marie reached out first. She called late one evening, her voice hesitant. "Evelyn, I can't stop thinking about what you said, about your birthday, about nationals. I remember those things too, and you were right. We all let it slide." Her words caught me off guard. For years, no one had acknowledged my side. To hear even one person admit the truth felt like a breath of air after being underwater too long. Soon after, Daniel messaged me privately. "Don't let them gaslight you. I saw how they treated you. I just never spoke up." Those small acknowledgments mattered more than I could explain. They meant I was not crazy. I had not imagined the imbalance. Other people had seen it. They had just chosen silence until now. Meanwhile, things at home for Mom and Lauren began to unravel. Without me there to absorb the blame, every minor problem turned into an argument between them. Lauren wanted money to cover overdue bills, and Mom, stretched thin, finally snapped. Why can't you be more like Evelyn? She never asks for help. The irony nearly made me laugh when I heard it later through the grapevine. For decades, I had been dismissed precisely because I managed alone. Now that independence was the weapon Mom used against her favorite. But the real turning point came a month later, during Thanksgiving. For years, that holiday had been Lauren's stage. The house would fill with relatives, Mom would brag endlessly about her, and I would sit at the corner of the table invisible. This year I didn't plan to go, but Aunt Marie called, insisting, "Come, Evelyn, you deserve to be there. Things are different now." Reluctantly, I agreed. When I walked into the house, I could feel the tension thick in the air. The table was set, the turkey steaming, but no one was smiling. Lauren sat stiffly, scrolling through her phone, her shoulders tight. Mom hovered by the oven, her smile forced. Whispers died the moment I entered. Everyone was watching, waiting for something. Dinner started stiffly. Mom tried to steer the conversation, bragging about Lauren's new job prospects, though everyone knew she had already quit 2 positions that year. I stayed quiet, letting her words hang. Then Aunt Marie cleared her throat. "Actually, I think we should talk about something else, about what happened this summer." Mom froze. "That's family business," she snapped. But Aunt Marie didn't flinch. "We are family, and we all saw things we ignored for too long. Evelyn deserves to be heard." The room shifted. For once, eyes turned to me, not to Lauren. My heart pounded, but my voice came steady. I spoke simply, without venom. I told them about the birthday overshadowed by a car in the driveway, about the trophies left in boxes while Lauren's posters covered the walls, about the silence I had lived with for decades. Each memory dropped into the room like a stone in water. People shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded slowly. Even Uncle Frank, who had always defended Mom, stared at his plate. Lauren exploded first. "This is ridiculous. She's making everything up because she can't stand that I'm the one people care about." Her voice cracked, higher than usual, desperate. Mom rushed to her defense, but the room was no longer one-sided. Daniel spoke firmly. "No, Lauren. She's telling the truth. We all saw it." The word silenced her. For once, the shield around her cracked. Mom tried to rally. "So what if I favored her? She needed me more. Evelyn was strong. She didn't require the same attention." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice calm. "That's the excuse, Mom. But neglect isn't love. Favoritism isn't love. And strength isn't an excuse to abandon someone." The table went quiet. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dismissed. I wasn't invisible. The weight of truth hung heavy, undeniable. Lauren's face flushed red as tears gathered, but no one rushed to comfort her. Mom looked smaller than I had ever seen her, her hands trembling as she set down her fork. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The point wasn't revenge. It was clarity. The room finally saw the truth laid bare, and there was no taking it back. After dinner, as people left in uneasy silence, I lingered by the door. Aunt Marie squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing." Daniel nodded once, his expression solemn. For the first time, I felt seen. Driving home that night, I realized the shift was permanent. The family could twist stories all they wanted, but the image of that table, Mom cornered by her own words, Lauren exposed without her shield, would linger. Their power over me was broken, not because they admitted defeat, but because everyone else had seen through the facade. They wanted me to bow. Instead, I stood. They wanted me silent. Instead, I spoke. And now, whether they accepted it or not, the truth belonged to me. In the days after Thanksgiving, I felt something I had never known before: peace. Not the fragile peace that comes from staying quiet and avoiding conflict, but the solid, steady peace of finally telling the truth. For years, my life had been a constant performance. Smile at the table, swallow the bitterness, make myself small so Lauren could shine. That script was gone. And without it, I realized how heavy it had been to carry. The house I grew up in no longer haunted me the same way. I could think of that kitchen table, the porch light, even the living room walls without feeling like they defined me. They were just walls now, just spaces where I once played a role that wasn't mine. The freedom of that realization was almost dizzying. Meanwhile, my mother and Lauren were left to deal with the cracks in their story. The family no longer believed them blindly. Relatives who once dismissed me began keeping their distance from the drama. Aunt Marie checked in often, her tone gentle but firm, telling me I had done what needed to be done. Even Daniel said he respected me more for standing up. Those small shifts mattered. They showed me that speaking out doesn't always change everyone, but it changes enough to loosen the chains you've carried. As for Mom and Lauren, their bond began to show strain. Without me as the scapegoat, they were forced to look at each other. Lauren's demands grew louder: money, sympathy, constant attention, and Mom couldn't keep up. The very traits she once praised in Lauren became a burden she could no longer manage. I didn't watch it with joy. I didn't want them destroyed. But I couldn't deny the irony. The favoritism that had crushed me was now swallowing them whole. I, on the other hand, learned to breathe on my own. I started small. I bought myself flowers for the first time, placed them on my kitchen table, and smiled every time I passed them. I took myself to the art museum I had wanted to visit in Florida, wandering through the exhibits at my own pace without anyone cutting me off or telling me to hurry. I even framed the old photo of me holding my debate trophy, the one that never made it onto the family wall, and hung it above my desk. It wasn't about bragging. It was about reclaiming the parts of me they had erased. The biggest lesson I carried was this: strength is not silence. I spent too many years thinking my endurance was proof of love, that if I just bore the weight without complaint, it meant I was loyal. But loyalty without respect is not love. It's surrender. And surrendering only teaches people they can take more. Speaking up didn't shatter me. It set me free. I don't know what the future holds with my family. Maybe Mom will never admit her part. Maybe Lauren will never see herself clearly. That's their choice. What matters is mine. And I have chosen not to beg for scraps of love anymore. I have chosen to give myself the dignity they withheld. I have chosen to walk away when staying means disappearing. If you've ever sat quietly in your own family, wondering why your voice doesn't matter, wondering if you're invisible, let my story remind you of this. You are not invisible. The silence was never proof that you weren't worth hearing. It was proof that others were too afraid of what you might reveal if you spoke. And when you finally do speak, the world shifts, even if just a little. That's why I wanted to share this, not to dwell on pain, but to show what happens when the shadow steps into the light. If you've carried a story like mine, I hope you know you are not alone. And if this resonated with you, stay with me here. Subscribe so you won't miss the stories that peel back the silence, that remind us all of the power in speaking truth. Because every time one of us speaks, another finds the courage to stop disappearing.